John, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Doug. Good to be here.
I'll be honest with you, I have to give you huge credit. Your About page made being a podcast host so much easier.
Thank you.
But on there, you have a really good origin story about reading Brian Tracy's book at an early age. How much did that learner mindset shape
Yeah,
your entrepreneurial journey?
completely. 100%. I mean, I was not a great student in high school, not because I didn't try, but I didn't know I was dyslexic. So, like, learning for me was very difficult. And when my dad gave me a set of tape sets when I was 18, before I started college, Brian Tracy, The Psychology of Success, he said, Jonathan, I think you will learn, you will learn more from these people than you will college. You still got to get above a 3-point in college or I'm going to pull you out, but you got which is the same thing I actually tell my kids. And I kind of like it. And I kind of find it annoying because, I feel like I'm saying the same thing my dad did because my son's going to college next year. But those tapes shaped me. And it was interesting because I didn't know at the time when I was 18, I didn't know till I was 30 that I was more auditory than I was visual. So I could retain at such a high level when I listened to things. And I remember putting in those headphones on for the very first time and thinking, oh, this is exactly what I want to do with my life. I want to speak. I want to coach. I want to write books. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. So I knew I wanted to be a business coach. I wanted to grow companies. I just didn't know what the path was.
So what did that path look like for you as you kind of went from one thing to the other?
Yeah.
I know you have a really cool story about the Silicon era.
Yeah. So it looked like this. I graduated Eastern Michigan University with a double major in economics and journalism. I worked at Channel 7, which was a local ABC affiliate here in Detroit, my last year of college. And I thought I was going to be the next Larry King or Dan Rather. I mean, I read their books. I loved them both. And I made it to the final 3 cut in Cadillac, Michigan of Channel 9 and 10 to be an online anchor / reporter. And after college, I went to Israel. And I was waiting to find out if I got this job. And I was in Israel and I was in Jerusalem at the King David Hotel. And if you've ever been there, it's a pretty regal hotel. We weren't staying there. We just stopped there to hang out there for a while. We were staying in like shtetls and like, tents and stuff. And I had to go to the bathroom. God, I haven't told this story in a while. So, and I had to go to the bathroom at the King David Hotel. So I was walking to the bathroom and it was this just beautiful hotel. And I walked by a boardroom and I walked past it. And then I walked backwards and just sat at the door. And there was a business meeting going on and people were negotiating and speaking and talking and debating and drinking coffee and, smoking. And like, it was just like, I just sat at the door and I thought, this is exactly the energy of what I want to be doing. And so in that moment, I decided I'm not going into TV journalism. I'm going into business. And that was it. And so I came home. I did not get the job at Channel 9 and 10. They did offer me a position at the, I can't think of the name, assignment desk that paid $6,000 a year. And I initially thought they said a month and then they said, no, that's a year. So I said, no. And so I thought I want to go in business. And I ended up right after within weeks of that, starting an internet business with my brother and a buddy of ours. I did the sales, my brother did the creative, and our other partner did kind of the day-to-day, type stuff. And we started this internet company in 1995 making websites. And we grew it within 2 years to about 24, close to 24 employees, give or take 18, 24. I can't even remember off the top of my head. Over 300 clients. And then we sold it to a company called US Web, which at the time was the largest internet professional service firm company in the world. We were partners in that company. And then once everything, our contracts were up, I left and I took a year and a half off to clear my head because it was just like a very stressful time. We could have another podcast episode about that. And then I got into commercial real estate and became a broker for 6 years. Long story short, was bored with, got restless with that, ended up taking over my office for 6 years, managed that office to be one of the most profitable in the entire company, brought it out of the recession of 2008, and then wanted to start my own business, but ended up going in-house and restructuring a 50-year-old company with my buddy, and then started my coaching business 6 years ago, June 1st, 2021. So
So
the
I,
journey was not in like you couldn't really map it out or read it in a textbook. It just kind of like happened.
it's funny because I see so many entrepreneurs take the oddest paths
Yeah.
to finding what they do. And I think part of it, one is just that innate curiosity entrepreneurs have. But the second is it's that willingness to experiment. It goes back to the foundation of being a learner.
Yeah.
And then you just stack the deck. So there's so much knowledge to give to people just from experiencing those things.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned you discovered early in life that you were dyslexic, something I know Richard Branson struggles with. It seems to be common amongst entrepreneurs. How did that help define in learning? Like, I might have something, but I'm going to flip this and be a superpower. I'm going to lean into auditory. Like,
Yeah.
how do some of those obstacles shape you as an entrepreneur, and how do you work through them?
You know, it was interesting because from the moment I listened to those first tapes, I listened to tapes, I would say almost every day. So, and then I would read, a few books a month, but the reading always took me a lot longer. So, and so it was always hard for me to understand why I could read a book, outline it, take notes, love it, and then if somebody asked me about it, I couldn't retrieve what the book was about. Yet I would be at a meeting 2 months later, and I could pull something in real time that was relevant from that book. It was such an odd, it was so odd to me, and I just couldn't figure out my processing, like how I process things. And so when I was about in my early 30s, I was in commercial real estate, and I had struggled like crazy my first year or so. Was like pounding the phones, working 100-hour weeks, and I had nothing. And then within a week, I got $100 million worth of listings. Literally, like all the seeds I had planted sprouted at the same time. Long story short, I had spent so many hours underwriting these deals, listing these deals. I knew them like the back of my hand, and I had to. I was in Detroit, and I was presenting them to my 3 Chicago offices over a conference call, which thank God the phone was staticky. And it was on a Monday morning, and I didn't spend the weekend reviewing them because I knew them like the back of my head, like I know my name. And so the call went on. I kind of gave the overview of everything, and then people started asking me questions, and I couldn't retrieve the answers. Like I couldn't remember. And I thought, what the hell is going on here? So I literally started sweating because I couldn't remember. And I had read a long time ago in a Herb Cohen book, You Can Negotiate Anything, that if you ever lose control of a meeting or a call, hang up on yourself talking. And so I was so stressed out. The connection was bad anyway. They kept on firing these questions at me. I was getting so overwhelmed, so anxious that I said basically, oh, the answer to that is, and then I hung up on myself. And then and then I emailed the manager. I was like, hey, sorry about that. I don't know what went wrong with the connection, but if any of your agents have time, if any of your agents have any questions, have them call me. And then I realized, okay, all I needed was a couple minutes review to trigger everything in my brain. So I immediately called my therapist and I said, something's wrong with the way that I learn. I need an IQ test. I took a 5-day, 2-hour-a-day test with him. And at the end of it, he said, you should buy the book, Living with Dyslexia. And so I said, well, for who? You know what I mean? Like, I don't read backwards. And, or maybe I did, but I didn't know. And anyway, what it did for me was it just kind of gave a definition and an understanding and drove home how I need to learn. Like, I don't identify, I'm not saying like, I don't have any victim card when it comes to it. It's just how my brain is. It's how it's wired. But it drove home how I need to have rituals in my life of how I learn and how I prepare. And so I have to give myself, no matter how much time I spend on something, if a day or two goes by, my brain won't retrieve something to the extent that I can unless I spend 1 to 5 minutes reviewing it prior to anything. And I have to take certain notes in, certain ways and write things down. Even when I'm talking to people and interviewing people or talking to clients, I type everything. I can type as fast as I can talk. So I type every word that I say or they say, so I can remember what we talked about 15, 20, 30, 60, 90 minutes ago. And someone will ask me a question during a podcast, and I'll write down certain words that will trigger what was said. And so I can remember. Otherwise, it all kind of gets jumbled up a little bit in my brain. And so understanding how my brain worked and then taking responsibility for the tools that I give myself and allocate myself the time to do the rituals I need so it doesn't hold me back.
And one of the other things you said, and this is really interesting because I know in Richard Branson's book, he talks about his superpower being dyslexia is he tends to see things people don't see
Oh,
because
I do
he's
too.
not looking linear. And it's something you
Correct.
also mentioned on your about page. How would you align that with that crazy journey you've been on to now give these unique insights to be able to coach and
Yeah.
mentor people to kind of see these blind spots?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I have and maybe it's a natural gift, maybe it's because of the dyslexia that I've had to kind of tune into certain gifts, but I can see and hear things that people can't see and that they can't hear. And when I'm coaching someone, whether it's one-on-one or a training or a group coaching that I have, I I allow myself to surrender to the universe and allow things to flow through me. And a lot of times I just can sense and pick up on things that people can. And I hear things and I can direct people in directions that they just didn't know were there. And sometimes they're like a millistep or a half a step or a step away, or they've had the idea with 15 other ideas, but the distractions are diluting them. And I can get them very iron focused. And so when I'm in a flow state and allow things to really flow through me, it's kind of like me working with the universe to kind of, and just like harnessing the energy to that specific person. So I know I'm always bringing custom value because it's all I really know how to do. I can't work off of a template. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work for me. It never has. It never will. Um, and that's just kind of how I work. And so um, it's an amazing journey, and I love it.
Do you attribute any of like the diverse experience you've had to being able to uncover new opportunities in different industries or with different people?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've been, listen, I've had my own business. I understand the struggles and the joy of that. I have sold a business that ultimately then ended up going public and became this corporate monster in the internet business. I was 25, have been on the cover of newspapers and writing articles and then getting treated like shit by the corporate higher ups who bought my company, and basically feeling like the biggest piece of shit in the world. And it's like, and realizing I'm glad I sold my company, but I want to start my own company again because this is not what I want. I've worked for, I've been an independent broker and built my business commission only, with where it takes 12 to 18 months to start and ramp up your business. And then I've grown, took over an office and the recession hit. And then I had to grow that. And not only the office, but my own skill set and confidence. And you can't read that stuff in a book. So there were plenty of people in the office when I took it over, when it went bankrupt, that treated me like a piece of shit. And then I had to win them over because I was managing the office. And you can't read that or learn that. You can't read that in a book or learn that in class. And so I had to learn how to deal with people on so many different levels, younger than me, older than me, in cases, people much smarter than me, but didn't have the EQ or the common sense that I had, and just dealing with all of that and just, layer in that with just normal life stuff. Right. Um, yeah, I think a lot has been thrown at me. And I mean, I'm grateful. I'm not saying a lot has been thrown at me in a negative way, but I'm able to coach people because I've been in a lot of the situations that they've been in. So I've studied it. I have good sense, but I've been there.
And one of the things I've seen, like experience life, great teacher, probably one of the best. But if you really want to accelerate your progress, chances are you work with a coach or have mentors or just good
Yeah.
people around you. What's your experience been with mentorship and how has it helped you along your journey?
Yeah. It's been everything. I have always had mentors. I have always had coaches. I'm a business coach now. I have a business coach. Prior to this business coach, I had a business coach for almost 15 years. Jules Rappaport, who was the greatest, he passed away. Unfortunately, it was like such a tragic loss for me. And and while I was, at some points, I had two business coaches, one for business, one for communications. Um, Mentorship. My father, my mother, my grandfather, many other people in my life. To me, it's been huge because it has accelerated my path. For me, and I find I can do this with many of my clients. There's so many distractions that we're thinking about, or we think that something's a good idea and it almost is a good idea, but it's not quite there. And mentors and coaches get you into the proper lane and dilute the distractions. And so something that I may spend, for example, 100 hours on, I'll run it by my business coach and I'll say, up, you're off just a sliver. Don't do this, don't do this, do this, do that. I'm kind of exaggerating. I mean, I'm accelerating the conversation, and so it'll take 100-hour thing. I say, oh yeah, that's not a good idea. So I scratch 100 hours, right? And then I move that. He said, you're better off spending 20 hours doing this, which will be more as effective as spending 200 hours. And so looking at that and saying, and having somebody who's been in front of you to say, hey, I've been there, that doesn't work. But this tweak, this nuanced tweak, this works. Oh, great. Okay, perfect. So that to me, it's priceless. I don't know how people get through life without mentors, without coaches. Many people see it as an expense. It's a complete investment to accelerate your growth and really just do so much for your mind.
Yeah, I've invested probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in coaching
Yeah.
courses at this point. Do you remember the first investment you made in a coach and what that transformation was like and the path it set you on?
Yeah, I mean, my coach, well, you know what? I'll rewind to this. Wasn't necessarily a coach, but my dad, when I was 18, I'll say Brian Tracy was my coach. I never hired him
Mhm.
specifically, but once I listened to that, I listened to every single tape he ever made. And then Jim Rohn, every single tape he ever made. Anthony Robbins or Tony Robbins, every single tape he ever made. So I would get a hold of these tapes and literally buy them in bulk and listen to every single one. And so those became huge mentors for me. But they weren't necessarily like, I didn't hire them. I didn't even know it was within my reach when I was 18, 19, 20.
Mhm.
But those people, I mean, I would invest hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars in just tape sets before I even knew kind of what a business coach even was. I mean, I don't even know if I knew what it was when I was 18, 19, 20. I mean, I had great guides and mentors around me, but those people were my coaches. So for all the people out there who can't afford a coach, right? Just go to iTunes or podcasts or now Clubhouse. I mean, those, you can learn so much. I mean, I took advantage of all of that. I belong to this monthly networking group where they brought in speakers. And so they would bring in Jim Rohn and they would bring in Brian Tracy and they would bring in, all of these amazing speakers. And I would go every single month. Every month I would go and they would have a new speaker every single month. And that was it was called Yes, a Positive Network. That was the first investment we made. And I remember it was like $200 for the year or something like that. And it was like so much money at the time. Meanwhile, when I look back, it was probably worth $20,000 because a membership, because every month you were getting it. And so we'd listen to a speaker, and then we'd buy every one of their tape sets, and I'd listen to everything they did, read all their books, read all their manuals, and And because the internet wasn't like it is today, or nor Audible nor Amazon wasn't even around. And I would go to Barnes and Noble or Borders and buy all their books. And so those shaped my life. I was reading a book a week. I was listening to, a tape set every time I got into the car, every time I ran, every time I worked out. All I listened to were these tapes. I literally probably had like 3 PhDs in listening to these people. But those were my first investments before. And then when I got a business coach, Jules, that was great. But by that time I had read thousands of books and hundreds of thousands of hours of self-study before I even knew like I want to be a business coach, but I didn't know what that meant really. And then it started to shape.
Well, it's amazing how like you get that commuter MBA, or like just when you're
Oh
traveling,
my
you're
God.
just
Yeah.
constantly
Yeah.
pulling in that. I remember I used to have to drive 2 hours both ways, so 4 hours. I'm like, man, I read over, I think, 80 books in a year just
Yeah.
because I was in the car for so long. And I too, I'm not a reader. I just don't absorb information from it.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you did make the pivot to becoming a business coach? Do you remember landing your first client and what that moment was like?
Yeah, it was great. So I had wanted to be a business coach forever. I was working with my coach. I was in the commercial real estate space. And he said to me once, you know what? I'm so fucking sick of you talking about wanting to do this. Like it was November and he's like, give me a date. When are you leaving? I was like, I said to him, April or March of next year. He's like, all right, you have 5 months to prepare. And I ended up leaving my career in April, ended up going in-house and helping restructure this company. And then I just knew it was time. And I prepped and got all my social media ready and just launched my business on social media. I didn't even have a website for 6 months because I called my website person and they were like, I'm like, can we get a website up in a week? They're like, it'll take about 3-4 months. So I launched it, and then I got my first client, and it was the greatest. It was the greatest, and I'm very grateful and thankful that my business took off quickly. I think because here locally, people knew what my track record was in business, and so it just started growing. And the first client was amazing because I always felt like I knew I could bring value to people. I knew I could bring value and get people unstuck. So that clarity to me was always so crystal clear. And it was backed up by a 60-page business plan that I created. But I felt like I was like in alignment with my purpose and I was ready to go. And then I got my first client, and then it started, expanding from there locally, expanding regionally, and then, around the country and then internationally. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
That's awesome. So where can people find you and learn more about your coaching program?
So everything can be found on my website, Jon Dwoskin, JOND as in David, WOSKIN.com. I wrote a book a few years ago called The Think Big Movement. It's downloadable for free. I have a 100-page ebook that's a workbook that will help anybody grow their business. I do business tips every day, live on all social platforms, also housed on my website. Showcases all my one-on-one custom coaching as well as a private coaching group. I'm a big believer that I think everyone in the world should have the ability and access to business coaching. That being said, I know people can't afford one-on-one always. So my private coaching group meets every Monday from 4:30 to 5:30. It's $50 a month. It's live coaching with me. And it's an incredible, incredible experience. People are loving it and I'm loving it. It's amazing. And I'm growing that to be continually just a great place to learn and to network for everybody in it. So jondwoskin.com, or anybody can call me directly at 248-535-7796 or drop me a text. And it is me getting back to people, not a robot. My follow-up is really good. So sometimes people say, I think, is this a robot? No, it's me. One of the things, I have about 8 people on my team virtually. And one thing that I never outsource is my communication with people. And if they call me, text me, they're getting me. So Yeah. So that's how, Doug.
So the final question I have for you today,
Yeah.
what is the one piece of advice you can share with the listeners to inspire them to find happiness in their pursuits?
Um, Meditate and take some silent time, right? Take some quiet time, because if you're always running, you're not going to find the joy in everything. And meditation has been a huge piece of my life, and taking time, even if you have to put it in your calendar, to go for a walk, get in nature. But if you're not carving out time to slow down and think about nothing and do nothing and give your brain, which is the biggest muscle in your body, a break, then you're not going to be able to enjoy everything. And just be patient. Everything happens in the timing that it's supposed to happen, and don't rush, and just enjoy every moment of every piece. For me, I love the building. I love all the elements. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that a lot, to really enjoy kind of where I am, because I can visualize and see the vision of where I'm going so clearly, that I want to get there. But then I have to remind myself to just enjoy where I am and soak it all in, and just have fun.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for joining me today, Jon.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening.